Kyle Bennett stood on the bridge of the Horizon's Dawn and watched the planet grow larger on the screen. Valeria Prime looked like a giant crystal ball floating in space. Its surface sparkled with millions of lights from cities that had existed for thousands of years. He took a deep breath and straightened his uniform. "We're approaching the landing zone, Commander," said Lisa Morgan from her station. She was the ship's science officer and had been studying the Valerian people for months. "Their traffic control is guiding us in now." Kyle nodded. This was the biggest mission of his career. Earth needed allies in the galaxy, and the Valerians were one of the most powerful civilizations out there. If this meeting went well, humanity would have a real chance at becoming part of the galactic community. If it went badly, Earth might stay isolated for decades. "How are you feeling about this, sir?" asked Ryan Carter. The security chief had been unusually quiet during the journey. He was a big man with careful eyes who didn't trust easily. "Nervous," Kyle admitted. "The princess has already said she doesn't want an alliance with us. We're starting from behind. Maybe she'll change her mind when she meets us," Lisa said, though she didn't sound very convinced. The ship landed smoothly at the royal spaceport. Kyle could see the palace in the distance, rising like a mountain made of glass and light. Tall towers reached toward the sky and bridges connected them high above the ground. It was beautiful and intimidating at the same time. A group of Valerian officials waited at the landing pad. They were tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished stone in different colors. Their eyes glowed softly, and they wore robes that seemed to shift colors as they moved. Kyle led his team down the ramp, feeling very aware that they were being judged with every step. "Welcome to Valeria Prime," said one of the officials in perfect English. His voice sounded like music. "I am Chancellor Vexeler. The princess has agreed to meet with you, though I must tell you that her position on this alliance has not changed. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with her," Kyle said, keeping his voice respectful and calm. "We hope to show her that humanity has much to offer as a friend." The Chancellor's expression didn't change. "Follow me, please." They walked through corridors filled with artwork that must have been priceless. Valerian history covered the walls in moving images that told stories Kyle couldn't fully understand. Everything was ancient and perfect. It made him feel like humanity was just a child trying to sit at the adult table. The grand chamber of stars took Kyle's breath away. The ceiling showed space itself, with real nebulae swirling in colors he'd never seen before. Stars moved overhead in patterns that must have meant something to the Valerians. The floor was smooth as ice and reflected everything like a mirror. At the far end of the chamber, on a raised platform, sat Princess Zarathiel. She was beautiful in an alien way that made Kyle's heart beat faster, even though he knew this meeting would probably be hostile. Her skin was pale blue and seemed to glow from within. Her eyes were silver and cold as winter stars. She wore a crown that looked like frozen lightning, and her robes flowed around her like water. On either side of her stood more officials. Kyle recognized General Krathness from the briefing materials. The military commander looked at the humans like they were insects. Other advisors watched with similar expressions of distrust or disdain. "You may approach," the princess said. Her voice was clear and sharp. Kyle walked forward with Lisa and Ryan behind him. He stopped at the proper distance and bowed slightly as the protocol briefing had instructed. "Your Highness, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I am Commander Kyle Bennett of Earth. This is Dr. Lisa Morgan and Chief Ryan Carter. I agreed to this meeting as a courtesy," Princess Zarathiel said, "but I want to be clear from the start. I do not support an alliance between Valeria and Earth. Your species is too young, too reckless, and too unpredictable. You have been in space for less than a century. We have been traveling the stars for 10,000 years. What could you possibly offer us that we don't already have?" Kyle felt the words like slaps, but he kept his face calm. "Your Highness, humanity may be young, but we've achieved much in a short time. We've overcome incredible challenges on our own world. We've learned to work together despite our differences. We have creativity, determination, and a desire to learn from older civilizations like yours." "Pretty words," the princess said, "but words are easy. Your history shows constant warfare, environmental destruction, and an inability to unite even your own planet. Why would we trust you as partners when you can barely manage your own affairs?" Lisa stepped forward slightly. "Your Highness, if I may speak? Every civilization has growing pains. I've studied Valerian history, and your people also went through periods of conflict and struggle. The difference is that it happened thousands of years ago, so it's distant enough to seem noble now. Our struggles are recent, but we're learning from them. The princess's eyes narrowed. You dare compare our ancient history to your recent chaos? We had evolved beyond such primitive behavior by the time we reached the stars. You brought your conflicts with you into space. Because we're still learning, Kyle said firmly but respectfully. And that's exactly why we need allies who can guide us. Isolation won't make us better. Partnership will. Partnership requires trust, the princess replied. And trust must be earned over time. Time that we are not willing to invest in a species that may destroy itself before reaching maturity. The meeting continued like this for an hour. Every point Kyle made was countered. Every achievement of humanity was dismissed. The princess was not cruel, but she was absolutely firm in her position. She had clearly made up her mind before they ever arrived. Finally, she stood. The movement was graceful and final. This meeting is concluded. I have heard your arguments, Commander Bennett, and they have not changed my mind. Filaria will not enter into an alliance with Earth at this time. Perhaps in a few centuries, if your species survives and grows wiser, we can revisit this discussion. Kyle felt disappointment settle in his chest like a stone. He had known this was likely, but he'd hoped for at least a small opening, some chance to build on. Your Highness, please reconsider. The floor suddenly shook hard enough to make Kyle stumble. The stars overhead flickered and went dark for a moment. Alarms began to wail throughout the palace, loud and urgent. Princess Zarathiel's expression shifted from cold superiority to alert concern in an instant. Her guards immediately surrounded her, hands on their weapons. Chancellor Vexeler's face showed real fear for the first time. What's happening? The princess demanded. One of the guards touched his ear, listening to communications. His face went pale. Your Highness, we're under attack. The Obsidian Hand has breached the palace defenses. Multiple explosions throughout the complex. They're heading this way. Another explosion, closer this time, shook the chamber. Dust fell from somewhere high above. The beautiful stars on the ceiling cracked and went completely dark. We need to get you to safety immediately, General Krathnis said, grabbing the princess's arm. As the Valerian guards began to move, Kyle caught the princess's eyes for just a moment. The cold superiority was gone. For the first time since he'd met her, Princess Zarathiel looked uncertain and perhaps even afraid. Then the doors exploded inward, and everything went to chaos. Smoke poured through the broken doors. Kyle's training kicked in immediately. He dropped low and pulled Lisa down with him. Ryan was already moving, grabbing a weapon from a fallen guard near the entrance. Through the smoke came figures in dark armor. They moved fast and fired energy weapons that lit up the chamber with bright flashes. The Valerian palace guards returned fire, their weapons making a high-pitched whine that hurt Kyle's ears. Move! Get the princess out! General Krathnis shouted. He was firing at the attackers while trying to push Princess Zarathiel toward a side exit. Kyle saw more attackers coming through that exit. Wait, that way's blocked too. The general didn't listen or didn't hear. He kept pushing the princess forward with her other guards. Chancellor Vexeler followed, nearly tripping over his own robes in panic. We need to help them, Lisa said, her voice tight with fear but steady. This isn't our fight, Ryan said, though his hand was tight on the weapon he'd picked up. We should get back to our ship. Kyle watched the Valerian guards falling one by one. There were too many attackers. The princess was going to die if someone didn't do something. She had been cold to them, dismissive of his entire species, but that didn't matter right now. She was a person in danger, and he was in a position to help. It is our fight, Kyle said. He grabbed a weapon from another fallen guard. Come on. They ran toward the princess's group, staying low and using the fancy pillars as cover. Energy blasts hit the floor near Kyle's feet, melting the smooth surface into bubbling pools. He fired back, not sure if he hit anything, but hoping he at least made the attackers cautious. The princess's group had reached the observatory wing, a long corridor with huge windows showing the planet below. The attackers were right behind them. General Krathnis turned to fight, trying to give the princess time to escape. Kyle saw him take a direct hit to the chest. The general fell hard and didn't move. No! The princess cried out. It was the first real emotion Kyle had heard from her. More attackers poured in from both ends of the corridor. The remaining Valerian guards formed a tight circle around the princess. But Kyle could see they wouldn't last long. There were at least 20 attackers and only 5 guards left. Chancellor Vexeler was frozen in fear, his back pressed against one of the huge windows. His eyes were wide and he was making small frightened sounds. Not much help there. Kyle, Lisa, and Ryan came in from the side. The attackers hadn't expected anyone else to be fighting back. Ryan took down 3 of them with quick, precise shots. Lisa had grabbed some kind of control pad from a fallen guard and was frantically working with it. "I think I can lock some of the doors," she said. "Give me 30 seconds. "You've got 20, Ryan muttered, firing again. Kyle moved to the princess's side. Her guards didn't want to let him close, but they were too busy fighting to stop him. "Your Highness, we need to get you out of here." She looked at him with those silver eyes, and he saw surprise there. "Why are you helping us?" "I dismissed you. I insulted your people." "We can talk about that later," Kyle said. He fired at an attacker who was getting too close. "Right now we need to survive," Lisa shouted in triumph. "Got it. The doors on the east side are locked. That cuts off half their reinforcements." But the attackers who were already in the corridor pressed harder. They knew time was against them now. One of them, bigger than the others and with red markings on his armor, seemed to be the leader. "Princess Zarathiel," the big one called out. His voice was rough and angry. "You have betrayed your people by even speaking with these humans. The obsidian hand will purify Valeria. Your death will be the first step." "You're insane, Dax Iron," the princess shouted back. "Valeria's strength comes from wisdom, not isolation." "Valeria's strength comes from purity," Dax Iron replied. He raised his weapon. "Goodbye, false princess." Kyle moved without thinking. He threw himself in front of Princess Zarathiel just as Dax Iron fired. The energy blast hit Kyle's chest armor, which was designed for human weapons, not alien ones. The impact felt like being kicked by a horse. It drove the air from his lungs and sent pain shooting through his whole body. He stumbled but stayed on his feet. The princess caught him by the arm. Her touch was surprisingly strong. "You fool," she said, but her voice was soft, not angry. Kyle raised his weapon with shaking hands and fired back. His shot hit Dax Iron in the shoulder, spinning the big terrorist around. Ryan followed up with 2 more shots that put Dax Iron on the ground. With their leader down, the other attackers hesitated. That moment of hesitation was all Ryan needed. He was a professional soldier, and this was what he'd trained for his entire life. He moved through them like a storm, each shot counting, each movement efficient. Lisa did her part too. She kept working with the control pad, sealing more doors and turning the corridor's lights on and off to confuse the attackers. It wasn't much, but it helped. The remaining Valerian guards found their courage again. They fought harder, protecting their princess with renewed strength. Together with the humans, they pushed the attackers back step by step. A final blast of energy took down the last attacker standing. Suddenly it was quiet except for the alarm still ringing throughout the palace. Kyle stood in front of the princess, his weapon still raised, scanning for more threats. His chest felt like someone was sitting on it and every breath hurt. He heard running footsteps and almost fired before recognizing them as Valerian palace security. Real reinforcements had finally arrived, heavily armed and ready. They poured into the corridor, securing the area and checking on the princess. "Your Highness, are you hurt?" one of the security officers asked. "I'm unharmed," Princess Zarathiel said. She was still holding Kyle's arm. Thanks to these humans, Kyle's leg suddenly felt weak. The adrenaline that had kept him going was fading fast. The pain in his chest was getting worse, spreading out in waves. He saw Lisa's concerned face swimming in his vision. "Kyle, you need medical attention," Lisa said. She was trying to support him on one side while Ryan got the other. "I'm fine," Kyle said, though he clearly wasn't. His voice sounded wrong even to himself. "No, you're not," Princess Zarathiel said. She turned to the security officers. "Get him to the medical center immediately. Use my personal physicians. He saved my life." Kyle wanted to say something, maybe something clever or brave, but his vision was going dark around the edges. He heard the princess's voice saying something else, sounding urgent and almost worried, but he couldn't make out the words. The last thing he remembered before passing out was wondering if his armor had actually stopped the blast, or if he was hurt worse than he thought. Then everything went black. When Kyle woke up, he was in a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud. The ceiling above him glowed with soft blue light that seemed to pulse in a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. Medical equipment surrounded him, some of it familiar, some completely alien. Lisa was sitting in a chair next to his bed. She looked tired but smiled when she saw his eyes open. "Welcome back, hero. How long was I out?" Kyle asked. His voice was rough. "About 6 hours," Lisa said. The Valerian doctors said you're lucky. That blast would have killed most people. Your armor absorbed most of it, but you still have significant internal bruising. They use some kind of cellular regeneration on you. You'll be sore for a few days, but you'll make a full recovery. Kyle tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his chest. The princess? She's fine. She's actually been here twice to check on you. She's coming back soon. Lisa paused. Kyle, things have changed. The whole planet is talking about what happened. A human risking his life to save the princess after she'd been so dismissive of your entire species. It's big news. Before Kyle could respond, the door opened. Princess Zarathiel entered, and this time she was alone. No guards, no advisors, just her. She had changed from her ceremonial robes into something simpler but still elegant. Her silver eyes found his immediately. Commander Bennett, she said quietly, we need to talk. Lisa took the hint and stood up. I'll go check on Ryan and let him know you're awake. She gave Kyle a meaningful look before leaving the room. Princess Zarathiel moved closer to the bed. She seemed different from the cold, distant figure in the grand chamber. She looked uncertain, maybe even nervous. For someone who had ruled with absolute confidence just hours ago, this was a dramatic change. How are you feeling? She asked. Like I got hit by an energy blast, Kyle said. He tried to smile, but it hurt too much. But the doctors say I'll live. Yes, I made sure of that. She pulled the chair closer and sat down. Commander Bennett, I need to thank you for what you did. You saved my life when you had no reason to. I had been rude to you and your people. I had dismissed everything you said. Yet when the moment came, you risked yourself for me. It was the right thing to do, Kyle said simply. You were in danger and I could help. That's all that mattered. That's all that mattered, she repeated softly. She looked down at her hands. I have been thinking about that. About how quickly you decided to help, without hesitation, without asking what you would get in return. That is not how politics usually works. That is not how I usually see people behave. Kyle watched her carefully. The cold princess was gone. The woman sitting next to his bed seemed real in a way she hadn't before, vulnerable and honest. I owe you an apology, Princess Zarathiel said. Actually, I owe your entire species an apology. I judged you without really knowing you. I saw humanity's youth and mistakes, and I assumed that was all there was to see. I was wrong. Your Highness, you don't need to apologize, Kyle started to say. Yes, I do. And please, when we're alone, call me Zara. The titles are exhausting. She finally looked up at him again. I want to understand humans better. I want to understand you. Would you tell me about Earth? Not the political facts and figures, but what it's really like? For the next hour, Kyle talked. He told her about Earth's blue oceans and green forests. He described cities full of different people, all living together despite their differences. He talked about human art and music, about the books he'd read and the places he'd seen. He told her about his childhood in Colorado, learning to ski in the mountains and watching storms roll across the plains. Zara listened with complete attention. She asked questions that showed she was really thinking about his answers, not just being polite. She wanted to know about human families and friendships. She was curious about human emotions and how people dealt with loss and joy. We have emotions too, of course, Zara said. But we are taught from birth to control them, to never let them show. It is seen as a weakness to feel too much, especially for someone of royal blood. I have been trained my whole life to be calm and logical above all else. That sounds lonely, Kyle said. Zara was quiet for a moment. It is, she admitted. I have advisors and servants and guards, but no real friends. Everything is about duty and tradition. Even this conversation we're having now would shock my advisors. A princess doesn't sit alone with anyone, especially not a male and definitely not a human. We can stop if you're uncomfortable, Kyle offered. No. The word came out quickly and firmly. This is the first real conversation I've had in years. Maybe ever. Please tell me more. So Kyle did. He talked about Ryan's terrible jokes and Lisa's obsession with ancient Earth history. He described movie nights on the ship and the terrible coffee in the mess hall. He told her about his dog back on Earth, a big friendly mutt named Charlie who loved everyone and everything. Zara laughed at that. It was a wonderful sound, musical and genuine. I would like to meet this Charlie someday. I'd like that too, Kyle said and realized he meant it. Over the next 3 days, as Kyle recovered, Zara visited him every day. Sometimes for an hour, sometimes longer. They talked about everything and nothing. She told him about Valerian history, but not the official version she would tell diplomats. She told him the real stories, with all the mistakes and struggles that had been polished away by time. She admitted that ancient Valerians had fought brutal wars over resources and territory. They had nearly destroyed themselves several times before learning to work together. The perfect civilization she had described in the Grand Chamber was built on thousands of years of failure and pain. "We are not naturally wise," Zara said. "We just had more time to learn from our mistakes. When I look at humanity now, I see my own people as they were long ago, full of potential but struggling to find the right path. That doesn't make you inferior. It makes you normal." Kyle was moved around the palace in a floating chair after the second day. Zara insisted on showing him the parts of the palace that tourists never saw. She took him to the archive where ancient books were kept, their pages preserved for millennia. She showed him the gardens where plants from 100 worlds grew under artificial suns. One evening she brought him to her private observation room. It was a small chamber at the top of the tallest tower, with clear walls that showed the stars in every direction. Valeria Prime curved away below them, beautiful and peaceful. "I come here when I need to think," Zara said. She stood next to his floating chair, looking out at the stars. "I come here to remember that we are small, despite all our power and history. The universe is vast and full of mysteries we haven't even begun to understand." "It's beautiful," Kyle said. "Yes." She turned to look at him. "Kyle, I need to tell you something. My advisors have been pressuring me to reconsider the alliance with Earth. The people are talking about what you did, and public opinion has shifted dramatically. Many Valerians now see humans as brave and honorable. They want to know more about your species." "That's good news," Kyle said carefully. "Isn't it?" "Yes, but that's not what I need to tell you." Zara looked nervous again, the way she had during that first private conversation. "The thing is, my advisors think I should reconsider the alliance for political reasons. But that's not why I'm going to do it. I'm going to support an alliance between our peoples because I believe in it now. Because you showed me that I was wrong. Because—" She stopped and took a breath. "Because when I thought you might die from that injury, I felt something I've never felt before. Fear, yes, but also something deeper. I realized I wanted more time to know you, to talk to you, to see what else you could show me about the universe." Kyle's heart was beating faster and he didn't think it was from his injury. "Zara, what are you saying?" "I don't know exactly," she admitted. "I've never felt this way about anyone. I don't even know if it's possible for a Valerian and a human to have this kind of connection. But I know that when I'm with you I feel less alone. I feel like I can be myself instead of just being the princess." Kyle reached out his hand. After a moment, Zara took it. Her skin was cool and smooth, different from human skin but pleasant in its own way. Her fingers squeezed his gently. "I feel it too," Kyle said. "I don't know what to call it either. But I know I've never talked to anyone the way I talk to you. I've never wanted to make someone laugh as much as I want to make you laugh. And when you smile, really smile, I feel like I'm seeing something rare and precious." They stood like that for a while, holding hands and looking at the stars. Neither of them spoke. There was too much to say and no words quite right for saying it. Finally, Zara let go of his hand. "Tomorrow there will be a formal dinner to celebrate our survival and to announce the new alliance. You and your crew will be guests of honor. After that we'll begin the real work of bringing our peoples together." "And us?" Kyle asked quietly. "What happens with us?" "I don't know," Zara said honestly. "This is complicated, Kyle. I'm a princess with duties I cannot ignore. You're a military officer with your own responsibilities. Our peoples are just beginning to know each other. A personal relationship between us could make things better or much worse. But you're willing to try?" She smiled and it made her face light up like sunrise. "Yes, I think you're worth the risk." The alarm that shattered the peaceful moment was different from the attack alarms. This one was urgent but controlled, a signal for the royal guard to assemble immediately. Zara's communicator buzzed. She touched it and her face went pale as she listened. They found another obsidian hand cell. A larger one. "They're planning another attack, and intelligence says it's going to happen during tomorrow's dinner. They're targeting both me and your delegation." The palace became a fortress overnight. Security teams swept every room and hallway. Guards doubled and then tripled. Kyle watched from his medical room as soldiers moved with grim efficiency through the corridors. He felt useless, stuck in bed while everyone else prepared for battle. Ryan came to see him early in the morning. "Doc says you can get up and move around now, but nothing strenuous." "How are you feeling?" "Ready to get out of this bed," Kyle said. He slowly sat up, pleased that the pain had faded to a dull ache. "What's the situation?" "Bad. The Obsidian Hand has support in places we didn't expect. Some palace staff, a few low-level officials, even 2 security guards. They've been planning this for months. The first attack was supposed to weaken the defenses. This second one is meant to finish the job." "Can we cancel the dinner?" Kyle asked. Princess Zara refuses. She says she won't let terrorists dictate her actions or make her look weak. The dinner will go on as planned, but with about 100 extra security measures. Ryan sighed. "I've worked with a lot of leaders, Kyle. Most of them would hide behind walls until the threat passed. She's got guts, I'll give her that." "She's remarkable," Kyle said quietly. Ryan gave him a knowing look. "Yeah, I've noticed how remarkable you find her." "Be careful, boss. Getting personally involved in a situation like this can cloud your judgment." "Too late for that advice," Kyle admitted. The medical staff cleared him later that morning. He was stiff and sore, but he could walk and move normally. Lisa brought him a fresh uniform, and for the first time in days he felt like himself again. The state dinner was planned for evening. The Valerian sun was setting when Kyle joined Ryan and Lisa in their assigned quarters. They had been given rooms in the diplomatic wing, beautiful spaces with windows that showed the palace gardens below. "You look better," Lisa said. "How are you really feeling?" "Nervous," Kyle said. "About the attack, about the dinner, about everything." "About the princess?" Lisa asked with a slight smile. Kyle didn't bother denying it. "Yeah, about that too. This whole situation is complicated." "Complicated is one word for it," Ryan said. He was checking his weapon, a nervous habit he had when things might go wrong. "A human and a princess from a civilization that thought we were too primitive to talk to a week ago. That's beyond complicated." "I know," Kyle said, "but I can't help how I feel. And I think she feels the same way." "Then maybe something good will come out of this mess after all," Lisa said. "Just try not to get killed before you figure it out." The grand hall where the dinner was held had been transformed. Instead of the cold, formal space where Kyle had first met Princess Zara, it now glowed with warm light. Tables were arranged in a circle around a central area, where musicians played strange and beautiful instruments. Delegates from a dozen worlds had arrived to witness the new alliance between Valeria and Earth. Kyle entered with his team, and every eye turned to look at them. He felt exposed and judged, but he kept his head up and his expression calm. They were representing all of humanity here, and he wouldn't let his people down. Then Princess Zara entered, and the room fell silent. She wore robes that seemed to be made of starlight itself, shifting from silver to blue to purple with every movement. Her crown caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls, but it was her face that caught Kyle's attention. She was smiling, really smiling, and when her eyes found his across the room, that smile grew warmer. She walked directly to him, ignoring protocol that said she should greet the most important delegates first. Kyle bowed, and she surprised everyone by placing her hand on his arm in a gesture of familiar affection. "Commander Bennett, I'm so glad you're well enough to attend," she said. Her voice was warm and genuine. "I wouldn't miss it, Your Highness," Kyle replied. "Please stand with me during the ceremony," she said. "You earned that honor," whispers rippled through the crowd. Having a human stand beside the princess during a formal state ceremony was unprecedented. Some of the Valerian officials looked scandalized. Others looked curious. A few smiled like they had expected exactly this. The ceremony began with traditional Valerian music and speeches from various officials. Chancellor Vexiller, who had been so frightened during the attack, gave a surprisingly eloquent speech about the value of courage and the need to look beyond old prejudices. Then it was Princess Zara's turn to speak. She stood in the center of the room, her voice clear and strong. "My people, honored guests, I stand before you tonight to announce a new alliance between Valeria and Earth. This is not a decision I made lightly. Some of you know that only days ago I was opposed to this alliance. I believed humanity was too young, too unstable to be trusted as partners." She paused and looked directly at Kyle. "I was wrong. During the recent attack on this palace, a human commander and his team risked their lives to save mine. They had no obligation to do so. I had treated them with dismissal and disdain. Yet when the moment came, they acted with courage and honor. Commander Kyle Bennett took a blast meant for me, nearly dying in the process." The room was absolutely quiet now. Every person hung on her words. But it is not just their courage that changed my mind. In the days since the attack, I have spent time with Commander Bennett and his team. I have learned about Earth and humanity. I have seen their art, heard their stories, and come to understand their hearts. What I found was not a young and reckless species, but one full of potential and passion. They are what we once were thousands of years ago, full of fire and hope and the determination to reach the stars. She spread her arms, encompassing the whole room. I propose not just a trade agreement, but a full alliance. Valeria and Earth, working together, learning from each other. We have wisdom born of age. They have energy born of youth. Together we can be stronger than either civilization alone. The applause started slowly, then built like a wave. Some delegates cheered. Others looked uncertain. But the momentum was clearly in favor of the alliance. Princess Zara made her way back to Kyle. Well, that's done. Now we just need to survive whatever the Obsidian Hand has planned for tonight. You really know how to ruin a romantic moment, Kyle said with a slight smile. Romantic? Zara's silver eyes sparkled with amusement. Is that what this is? I think so. I'm new to this whole falling for an alien princess thing, and I'm new to falling for a human commander who jumps in front of energy blasts. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. After dinner, come with me to the zero-gravity gardens. I want to show you something, and I want to continue our conversation from yesterday without interruption. Before Kyle could respond, the lights went out. For a moment, there was only darkness and confused voices. Then emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in red. Kyle's hand went automatically to where his weapon should be, but they hadn't been allowed to bring weapons to the formal dinner. Ryan appeared out of the crowd, moving fast. Kyle, get the princess out of here. Now, what's happening? Zara demanded. They cut the main power and blocked the primary exits, Ryan said. This is it. The attack is starting. Explosions echoed from somewhere in the palace. Not close yet, but getting closer. The guests panicked, pushing toward the exits and finding them sealed. The Valerian guards tried to maintain order, but fear was spreading like fire. Kyle grabbed Zara's hand. The zero-gravity gardens. You said they're above us. Can we reach them? Yes, there's a private lift in the back, Zara said. She was scared but thinking clearly. But if we go there, we'll be trapped if they follow us. Then we'll have to make sure they can't follow, Kyle said. He looked at Ryan and Lisa. Get as many people out the secondary exits as you can. Create chaos, make them split their forces. What are you going to do? Lisa asked. Buy time, Kyle said. And keep the princess safe. He pulled Zara toward the back of the hall, moving against the flow of panicking guests. Behind them, he heard the main doors explode inward. Shouting and weapons fire filled the air. The Obsidian Hand had arrived, and they were done being subtle. The private lift was hidden behind a decorative panel. Zara opened it with a touch, and they stumbled inside. The lift started to rise just as Kyle saw armed figures in dark armor entering the hall. One of them spotted the closing lift doors and pointed. They saw us, Kyle said. Then they'll be right behind us, Zara replied. The gardens are beautiful, Kyle, but they're not defensible. We'll be sitting ducks up there. Not if we're smart about it. Kyle's mind was racing. These gardens, they're in zero gravity, right? Do you train in zero-gravity combat? Some, but not much. Why? Because I do. A lot. Kyle smiled grimly. If they want to follow us into your gardens, I'm going to make them regret it. The lift doors opened into a space that took Kyle's breath away even in the middle of a crisis. The zero-gravity gardens floated in a massive dome above the palace. Plants from 100 worlds drifted in the air, glowing with their own light. Paths of solid light connected floating platforms. The stars shone through the transparent dome above, and in the distance, Kyle could hear the lift coming back down to collect their pursuers. Kyle pushed off from the entrance platform and floated into the garden proper. In zero gravity, movement was about physics and momentum, not strength. He had trained for months in zero-G combat during his military career. Most soldiers hated it, but Kyle had found it natural, almost like dancing. Stay close to me, he told Zara. Move when I move. Stop when I stop. In zero gravity, small movements matter more than big ones. Zara followed his lead, her natural grace helping her adapt quickly. They moved deeper into the gardens, using the floating plants and platforms as cover. Kyle was looking for advantages, for places where he could control the fight even without weapons. The lift doors opened again. 6 figures in dark armor emerged, weapons raised. Kyle recognized the lead figure immediately. even in the dim light of the gardens. It was Dax Iron, the terrorist leader from the first attack. Kyle's shot had wounded him but not killed him. "Princess," Dax Iron called out, his voice echoing in the dome. "There's nowhere to run. The gardens are sealed. You and your human pet will die here and Valeria will be pure again." "You're insane," Zara shouted back. "Killing me won't change anything. The alliance will happen with or without me. But your death will be a symbol," Dax Iron replied. "The price of betraying our ways. The price of letting aliens corrupt our people." Kyle whispered to Zara. "Can you control the garden systems from here?" "There's a control platform near the center, but we'd have to cross open space to reach it." "Then that's what we do. When I say go, push off hard toward that cluster of purple plants. Don't stop, don't look back. I'll be right behind you. Kyle, they'll shoot us. Not if they can't predict where we're going. Trust me." Zara looked into his eyes and nodded. "I trust you. Go." They launched themselves across the open space. Energy blasts lit up the darkness as the terrorists fired at them, but hitting a moving target in zero gravity was nearly impossible. Kyle twisted in mid-flight, using his hands to push off a floating platform and change direction unexpectedly. Zara followed his lead, moving like water, unpredictable and fluid. They reached the purple plants and used them for cover. Kyle could hear the terrorists spreading out, trying to surround them. But in zero gravity there was no real up or down, no floor to anchor to. That made tactics different, and Kyle was counting on his enemies not being as comfortable in this environment. "Keep moving," Kyle whispered, toward that big red flower to the left, then up toward that platform with the golden tree. They moved like ghosts through the garden, always in motion, never where the terrorists expected. Kyle was leading them in a spiral pattern that would eventually reach the control platform Zara had mentioned, but more importantly, he was leading them through the densest parts of the garden, where floating plants blocked sight lines and made firing dangerous. One terrorist got too close, trying to cut them off. Kyle grabbed a thick vine as he passed it and used it to swing his legs around, catching the man in the chest with both feet. In zero gravity, the impact sent the terrorist spinning away, unable to control his momentum. He crashed into a cluster of plants and got tangled in their roots. "That was amazing," Zara breathed. "That was physics," Kyle said. "Your turn. See that guy floating near the blue dome? He's not anchored to anything. If you push off from this platform and hit him at an angle, he'll spin away and you can grab his weapon. I'm a princess, not a soldier. Right now you're a survivor. You can do this." Zara took a deep breath and pushed off. Her aim was perfect. She hit the terrorist's arm, knocking his weapon loose. She grabbed it as she floated past, then used his body to push off again, sending him tumbling in the opposite direction. She floated back to Kyle, holding the weapon like it might bite her. "I got it. You did great. Now we have a chance." They continued moving, now fighting back when they had clear shots. Zara wasn't a trained fighter, but she was smart and learned quickly. Between Kyle's combat training and her knowledge of the gardens, they managed to take down 2 more terrorists. But Dax Iron was still out there, and he was getting angry. Kyle could hear him shouting orders to his remaining fighters, trying to coordinate them. The terrorists were starting to adapt to the zero-gravity environment. Kyle and Zara finally reached the control platform. It was a small circular space with panels of glowing symbols. Zara immediately went to work, her fingers dancing across the controls. "What can you do from here?" Kyle asked, keeping watch for enemies. "I can control the gravity in different zones. I can seal off sections. I can even open the dome emergency vents, which would create strong air currents." She paused. "But that last one would affect us too. Can you create a gravity field just around this platform while leaving the rest in zero-G?" "Yes, why? Do it. Give me something to stand on and them nothing to anchor to. Then I can fight properly." Zara worked the controls. Suddenly, Kyle felt weight return to his feet. The platform under them now had normal gravity, but the rest of the gardens remained weightless. It was disorienting for a moment, standing on a small island of gravity in a sea of weightlessness. "Perfect," Kyle said. "Now when they come for us, they'll be floating and I'll be grounded. That's a huge advantage." As if summoned by his words, Dax Iron appeared, pulling himself through the gardens toward them. His remaining 2 fighters flanked him, all 3 moving with grim determination. "Clever, princess," Dax Iron called out. "But it won't save you. We end this now." Kyle positioned himself between Zara and the approaching terrorists. He had the captured weapon ready, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. Not against 3 trained fighters, even with the gravity advantage. Zara, he said quietly, whatever happens, I want you to know that these past few days with you have been the best of my life. You made me see the universe differently. You made me feel things I didn't know I could feel. Don't you dare say goodbye to me, Zara said fiercely. We're getting out of this together. I'll do my best, Kyle promised. The terrorists opened fire as they closed in. Kyle returned fire, managing to hit one of the flanking fighters. The man went limp and floated away out of the fight. But Dax Iron and his last fighter were still coming. Kyle aimed at Dax Iron and pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. The weapon was out of charge. Zara, run! Kyle shouted. No. She grabbed his arm. Together, remember? Dax Iron landed on the gravity platform, his feet finding purchase. He raised his weapon, pointing it at Kyle's chest. Any last words, human? Kyle stood straight, meeting the terrorist's eyes. Yeah, humans don't quit. We don't give up. And we protect the people we love no matter what. Love? Dax Iron laughed. You love her? A human and a Valerian? You're even more pathetic than I thought. Yes, I love her, Kyle said clearly. He felt Zara's hand tighten on his arm. And that's something you'll never understand. You hate so much that you've forgotten what it means to care about someone else. Dax Iron's finger tightened on the trigger. Die with your foolish love, then. The shot never came. The last terrorist fighter suddenly cried out and went limp, floating away. Behind where he had been, Ryan appeared, pushing through the gardens with Lisa and a squad of Valerian guards. Dax Iron spun, trying to target this new threat. Kyle didn't give him the chance. He launched himself at the terrorist, using the gravity platform as a springboard. They collided hard, and Dax Iron's weapon went flying. They grappled in the air just beyond the platform, spinning and fighting. Dax Iron was bigger and stronger, but Kyle had trained for this. He used the man's momentum against him, redirecting rather than resisting. They crashed into plants and platforms, the whole garden becoming their battleground. Finally, Kyle managed to wrap his arm around Dax Iron's neck from behind. He squeezed, cutting off blood flow to the brain. The terrorist struggled, but without leverage and zero gravity, he couldn't break free. After several seconds, Dax Iron went limp. Kyle pushed him away and grabbed a vine to stop his own spinning. He was breathing hard, bruised and exhausted, but alive. He pulled himself back to the gravity platform where Zara waited. She caught him as he landed, pulling him into an embrace. You idiot. You wonderful, brave idiot. Did you just call me wonderful? Kyle asked, smiling despite everything. Yes. She pulled back to look at him. And did you really just tell a terrorist that you love me? It seemed like the right time, Kyle said. Was I wrong? Instead of answering with words, Zara kissed him. Her lips were cool against his, gentle but unmistakable. Kyle felt like the garden was spinning again, but this time in the best way possible. When they finally broke apart, Ryan was standing nearby with Lisa and the guards, all of them politely looking elsewhere. Sorry to interrupt, Ryan said with a grin, but we should probably get you both back to safety. The obsidian hand is finished. We got them all. The next few hours were a blur of medical checks, security debriefings, and concerned officials. Kyle sat through it all in a daze, still feeling the touch of Zara's lips on his. Finally, in the early hours of the morning, he found himself back in the diplomatic quarters. He was about to collapse into bed when someone knocked on his door. It was Zara, still in her torn and dirty robes from the evening. She looked exhausted and beautiful and real in a way that made Kyle's heart ache. Can I come in? She asked. Always, Kyle said. She entered and closed the door behind her. For a moment, they just looked at each other. The